Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to once again write our first body paragraph. Now, think about this. You have already done this before. We did this for our fear essay, and if you'll recall, we used Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum as our first source. And then when we did our freedom essay, we used Franklin Delano Roosevelt's The Four Freedom Speech as our first source. Today, we're going to be using Desmond Tutu's Let South Africa Show the World How to Forgive speech as our first source. And we've already done all the hard work, actually, because back when we read Let South Africa Show the World How to Forgive, you did annotations. Hopefully back then, I stress that you should have given a good quote dealing with forgiveness. And Desmond Tutu's speech, it's all about how forgiveness is better than revenge. He basically sets the theme for us. And clearly the best answer to this, I mean, you can go which way you want, but clearly the best answer to this would be that forgiveness is better than revenge. Or that revenge is bad. You can talk about that as well. In fact, I would say revenge is bad for your conclusion, but we'll talk about that when we get to that. No. Today, we are answering the question, why is forgiveness better than revenge? And we're going to be using a quote from Desmond Tutu's speech in order to help us answer that. And of course, it's filled with them. So you're going to go back to your annotations from that, and you are going to pick the best quote that you have showing why forgiveness is better than revenge. Of course, if you don't have it on the annotation sheet, you can go to the first read guide and you will find those those quotes and those annotations as well. Now, hopefully back then as well, you already annotated. You gave the quote, you said, this quote clearly shows that forgiveness is better than revenge for, whatever reason. And then you give 2 sentences explaining why. And then, of course, you said this is important because it gives us a real life example of why forgiveness is better than revenge, and a very famous historical one at that. And then we're done with this paragraph. But let's take a look. Of course, I have a worksheet for you, and you should follow that worksheet. It's now step by step, and this paragraph should basically write itself. I'm assuming and I'm hoping that your anxiety level is like this time, whereas for the fear essay, pardon the pun, we were afraid of writing this essay. The anxiety was huge, but now it's small because we know how to do this, right? You're fusing your idea with an expert's idea. You already know your thesis, and you're going to explain that in the first couple of sentences. Then you're going to give your quote. Consider the following quote. This is important because, and we're done. That's how we write an essay, ladies and gentlemen. We fuse the expert's ideas with our own. We make sure that they're cited correctly, and we annotate them properly. So let's take a look. I'm going to present it for you right now. Let's take a look at our worksheet. If we follow this worksheet, there it is. If we follow this worksheet to the letter, you should do fabulous on this paragraph. It should write itself basically, and you should do a good job. So let's see. This is where you're going to use your best quote from the first major source we read, which was, of course, Let South Africa Show the World How to Forgive. Example, we know that. Now is the time to give a quote from a speech to support your position. So first, take 2 or 3 sentences, ladies and gentlemen, and explain the thesis again, that people are constantly forced to choose to forgive people in their life, that they're always being wronged. You can't get through life without being wronged by somebody, even your best friends and loved ones, your family, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. People are going to wrong you, even if it's just them eating the last cupcake. And you said, don't eat the last cupcake, anybody. And then your brother goes and eats the last cupcake. Well, should you get revenge out on your brother, or should you forgive him? It's an interesting question. Now, I would forgive him because revenge is only going to make him. I had older brothers, so if you took revenge out, then they were just going to come after you, and they would even eat more cupcakes. So the problem would continue. But I would forgive him. In other words, I wouldn't take my revenge out on him, but I would darn well sure seek justice. And I would go to my parents and I would say, dude, that man's taking my cupcake again. Can you please not stop him from doing that? So again, this is going to happen to you throughout life. You're always going to be wronged by people. The question is, do you forgive them, or do you take out your revenge on them? So talk about that for 2 or 3 sentences, and then you are done, right? Then you are going to explain in 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 sentences that there are unbelievably good examples in history of people being forced to change, to choose this as well. And Desmond Tutu, in his famous speech, Let South Africa Show the World How to Forgive, provides unbelievably great examples of why forgiveness is the best choice for so many reasons. So explain that for a couple of sentences. Desmond Tutu goes out of his way to teach the world that forgiveness is the better way to go than revenge. He did this in his speech. Then it's time, of course, to offer one of your quotes. So you're going to say, consider the following quote from Let South Africa Show the World How to Forgive. You're going to give that quote. Then, of course, you're going to explain that quote. This quote clearly shows. Now, notice, by the way, I gave you 3 different ways that you can start your quote. An excellent quote from the speech to support this is, or this can clearly be seen by the following quote, or consider the following quote. That's always the easiest one, right? I would try mixing it around a little bit. If you always use consider the following quote, try one of the other ones, right? So you're going to give your quote. Then you're going to explain this quote. This quote clearly shows that Desmond Tutu understood and believed that. Finish it from there. I mean, clearly he believed that forgiveness is the best thing to do for so many reasons. And then explain a couple of those reasons. Talk about the fact that he said, if you don't forgive, you can't move forward. If you don't forgive, you can't be happy with yourself. If you don't forgive, you'll always have that rage inside you, and you'll always be angry, and you'll never really be able to live a quality life. Remember, he didn't say that you had to forget. He did not. He just said that forgiving has to happen in order to move forward. He never said anything about reconciling. Oh, maybe he did it. That's for you to decide. But again, explain your quote. This quote clearly shows that Desmond Tutu understood and believed that forgiveness was the better way to go for so many reasons, and then talk about that. And then, of course, you're going to finish with, this is important because, and then finish that sentence. Why is it important? Well, this is important because it shows us a real world example of why forgiveness is better than revenge. This is important because, I don't know, you go from there. There's so many ways that you can go from there. If anybody has any problems or questions, of course, you can ask me. I'd love to help you, but I kind of already have helped you. You have followed this step by step, do 2 or 3 sentences doing that, 1 or 2 doing that, give your quote, quote start, quote finish. This is important because, and you will have written an unbelievably good paragraph. I know it. Remember, go back to your annotations or to the first read guide for Let South Africa Show the World How to Forgive. Find your best quote. You should have given 3 to 5 quotes. Find the best one. Look through each one of them and then find the best annotation. You should have an annotation to match it. You can copy and paste them right into number 3 and 4 here. If anybody has any problems or questions, please ask me. Otherwise, good job.